With development activity increasing across the island, we're checking in on how the National Environment and Planning Agency, that's NEPA, balances growth with environmental protection. Joining us is Director of the Applications Management Division, Miguel Nelson. Good morning.
Morning, Miguel.
Joining us.
How are you doing?
I am good.
Growth with, what is our managing?
Development.
Growth with development. Two things are mutually inclusive, but not always executed that way, right? Usually, or oftentimes, one is at the expense of the other. So tell us what the situation is now as it pertains to our balance of both as we build.
Well, I think you said the right word, and the key is balance, right? So if you look at what sustainable development is and what it talks about, by definition, it includes development. But it also includes, you're looking at the economic aspects, the social aspects, and the environmental aspects. And you'd appreciate that balance is sometimes challenging to achieve in life, right? So it's no different with trying to achieve sustainable development. So you have the environment pulling in one direction, you have the economy pulling in one direction, and you have the social pulling in one direction. You have to try to find a middle ground that achieve what is best for the environment, what is best for the economy and development, and what is best for the people who we are planning for.
If I'm building an apartment building, why I need to call you? When I say call you, I mean NEPA. Why I need to call you?
Right. So.
And I need to, right? Let's get that straight first.
Yes, you need to.
I need to.
You need
okay,
to.
So, but why I need to call you? I have the space, I buy my land, I get town planning to tell me I can do this. Why you have to get involved?
Right. So the Town and Country Planning Authority Act establishes the Town and Country Planning Authority, which sets the planning imperatives for the country, so to speak, right? And you don't want development just to occur willy-nilly, right? There are guidelines and there are standards that should be complied with in order to have sustainable and managed development, right? So the development order sets the broad, under the TCP Act, the development order basically sets the planning.
TCP?
TCP, the Town and Country Planning Authority, right? So it sets the broad guidelines for planning in certain jurisdictions, usually for a parish. And it will say that this parcel of land, which never owns, is for residential purposes, and that the maximum height is XYZ, the density is this and that and that, right? So you have a right, because you own the land, to do development, but there are parameters that would what you can do.
You mentioned a word that's very important, compliance.
Correct.
Do you find that folks are doing their best to comply? We know you've refused some applications, and even some that have started to build, and you say, this cannot be done. Are folks following the letter of the law? And what reason have you had to deny others?
Well, generally, when we speak of compliance at the agency, it's usually in reference to persons complying with the approvals that they would have been granted. However, persons do submit applications that are not in strict conformance with the guidelines and the standards. However, as you know, there are guidelines and standards. So sometimes the authority, the TCPA, can vary depending on the specific circumstances, right? But generally speaking, the development should comply with what is in the development order. But developers are developers, that's their job. And so sometimes they will apply for things that are outside of what we are willing to consider at this particular point in time. Because you'd appreciate that some of the developments that are taking place now that are in compliance or in conformance with what is stipulated in the order would not have been approved probably like 10 years ago, because things have changed. We have land is finite. There we have set new standards that will allow for larger developments in specific areas. And so sometimes they're a little premature, if you want to put it that way. And so sometimes we have to say, at this point in time, we are not able to consider this particular scope of development now.
I suspect you will remember this. I'm going to read something here. It says at least 7 multi-story residential proposals were halted in 2025 by NEPA. I moved down to say in 2025, the clearest illustration came from Kingston 6, where one developer sought approval for 2 high-density housing projects, one with 78 units and one with 82 units. But NEPA shut both proposals down and said it was premature, as you just said, and over-intensive. What are
What is over-intensive?
Yeah.
Too intense.
No, but when you say premature, I mean, and again, what do you mean by those two? I mean, I know what the words mean, but what do you mean?
Right. So basically, let's look at the premature. So the guidelines are set now, but you'd appreciate that. So we are always looking at the guidelines, the standards, and revising them. So we might change the guidelines in the next 5 years. We might do new master plans for different areas, which might change the standards, right? And so, not because something is refused today means that tomorrow it cannot be considered, because we don't know what the studies and the research will say. So we say that the development is premature. At this present point, as at today, it cannot be considered.
Over-intensive means what?
Over-intensive. So one way to control the scale of a particular development is we speak about the density, right? So in looking at density, there are various parameters that you use. One is the number of habitable rooms per acre. So you look at the number of habitable rooms in the development, looking at this compared to the square footage of land that is available. We also look at the footprint of the development, how much area on ground the building would cover, and we look at the mass of the building compared to the area of land. So that is the floor area ratio.
Miguel,
So,
I drive around Kingston now and I'm like, I'm looking at some of these buildings, you know, some of the residentials that have been bought and some of the structures that have gone up, or some of the houses that used to be able to see across the road, you can't see nothing now because the light black out. What are some of the requirements that you look at in terms of, I guess it's the same density and so on, but a lot of them are very urban too, no green spaces, no. What is your edict as it relates to what should happen in that case and how that can impact environment and environmental degradation?
Right. So that comes again now at looking at and trying to achieve that balance. So ideally, in ideal scenario for planning purposes, right, you'd want the best use of the resources, right? I want you to live right beside your workplace, right beside where you go for entertainment, so that you spend less time on the road, so that you can walk to work. There's less congestion. So all of this and better use of the resources that are being put in place, right? But consider now that land is finite. Everybody needs somewhere to live. Everybody needs somewhere to work. So wouldn't it be preferable that we go up as opposed to spread out and use up probably agricultural lands and have to go into areas that are currently undisturbed? So that is the balance, the trade-off are we trying to achieve, you know? Yep. I'm not going to say it's a perfect balance at this current point in time, but we're trying to achieve what is...
Obviously, you're a NEPA. Earlier, I said town planning because you need permission. So how you and town planning work? Can town plan... My question would be, can town planning say yes and NEPA say no?
All right. So NEPA doesn't really say yes or no. NEPA makes a recommendation to the authority, which is the Town and Country Planning Authority or the Natural Resources Conservation Authority, and they make the decision.
Can the recommendation be shafted or overruled? It can?
Yes, it can be.
But still,
generally speaking.
Yeah, but still, I know what you say, you don't say no, but can town planning say yes and you say this don't make any sense, and whoever is supposed to make that decision, but can you go against what town planning say?
So let me make it very clear. All right. So you have NEPA, which is an executive agency, and the law that deals with planning and environment speaks to the Natural Resources Conservation Authority, the NRCA, and the Town and Country Planning Authority, which is the TCPA, right? In the simplest sense, NEPA is the technical arm, so to speak, of these authorities. And we do the work, we prepare the orders, they approve the orders, and the developments are assessed against orders and other relevant material consideration, and we make a recommendation to the authorities.
But that's a crucial cog in the wheel. You're the foundation.
Right.
So you ought really not to be overruled.
Yes, I'm saying that they can legally because the decision is theirs. But in most instances, generally, they take the recommendations.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. And
thank you for having me.
And explaining. Yeah.
Good work. Director of the Applications Management Division, Mr. Miguel Nelson. All the very best for 2026 to you and your family.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thank you. Up next, Statins October 2025 Labor Force Survey. Interesting information there. We unpack that on the other side of this break.